Hello from the Channel Studio in London and welcome to another edition of Foreign Dispatches, the programme that takes you around the world in 25 minutes. I'm Teniola Oyitayo. On the programme this week, hundreds arrested and charged as anti-immigrant protesters wreak havoc across England. Plus, Bangladesh Parliament dissolved a day after the resignation of the Prime Minister following protests that left hundreds dead. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, in office just over a month, has promised to crack down on groups of far-right-wing protesters who have ignited a week of racially motivated anti-immigrant riots across England. The rioters have attacked mosques and hotels that are being used to house asylum seekers. More than 6,000 specialist officers were mobilised to respond to as many as 30 far-right protests across the country on Wednesday alone. Scenes of violence like these have plagued towns and cities across the UK since July the 30th, the day after 3 young girls were killed in Southport, northwest England. Rioters have gathered in about 20 locations so far, with cities including Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester and Leeds targeted. In London, which has the largest number of migrants among all regions of the UK and a huge Nigerian community, many say they are appalled by the events that have played out in other parts of the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely appalling, and it's shocking that people in this country are like that. Especially as they tagged it on, the terrible death of those children, what those poor families must think. And, you think in today's world we'd all get along, wouldn't you? But I just think I feel really ashamed that things like that can happen in this country today.
The riots are absolutely appalling. I can't see any justification for them. It's all based upon a false thing. What happened in Southport is terrible, and to the children there, and it's just being exploited by extremists for no good reason. I think they just want to punch up a lot of these people. And it's just so depressing, and more people are getting involved, and they're using all sorts of pretexts and excuses basically to cause a lot of damage.
I just think it's absolutely terrible that the right wing have decided to take over, and what was a really heartbreaking situation for some families, they've just used that as an excuse now to bring out the worst in themselves. And I feel the government does need to come down hard. I think they probably need to bring in the army just as a deterrent to stop these thugs from basically attacking innocent people, whether they're immigrants or not, if they're asylum seekers or not. They have every right to be here just as much as anyone else. And the people that are born here of different colours, we have just as much right to be here as anyone else. And they're just thugs, basically.
Anti-migrant rhetoric has been increasingly widespread in Britain in recent years, with critics saying that trend has emboldened far-right sympathisers and contributed to the recent riots.
Less than 4 weeks ago, we were celebrating England in the final of the Euros, and everybody was excited. The whole country was excited, regardless of what color you are, black, white, brown. Everybody was having a good time, believing the cup is coming home. And then a few weeks down the line, we are seeing people can't get out, and it has been really, really shocking. But we kind of see it coming. Like over the last, let's say, a decade or more, it has been a constant rhetoric from the political class. We had Theresa May with the hostile environment. You have David Cameron cut migration to tens of thousands. So you have all of this that has been coming up. Even in the last elections, you had people like Jacob Rees-Mogg saying, let us do a deal with reform, let us, and we know the rhetoric has been like, cut migration, cut migration, cut migration. So we feel that a particular demographic is being demonized, and that you could see it blowing up. And when the shocking, barbaric incident happened of the girls that were murdered in Southport, it just triggered so many fake news online saying the culprit here is an asylum seeker that came by boat. Some people said the culprit is a Muslim, and that wasn't true. It was because the culprit was less than 18. That was why the court could not name the person. So it just triggered the gunpowder that we've all been sitting on.
The Nigerian High Commission on Monday released a statement warning citizens planning to visit the UK. The alert advises Nigerians to be extra vigilant and self-aware at all times and to avoid crowded areas, large gatherings, and political processions and rallies. Malaysia, India, and Australia have also issued travel warnings. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has warned rioters that they will face the full force of the law.
I utterly condemn the far-right thuggery we've seen this weekend. Be in no doubt, those that have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law. The police will be making arrests, individuals will be held on remand, charges will follow, and convictions will follow. I guarantee you will regret taking part in this disorder, whether directly or those whipping up this action online and then running away themselves. This is not protest. It is organised, violent thuggery, and it has no place on our streets or online.
More than 400 people have been arrested so far in relation to the riots, and dozens have been charged. The offence of violent disorder carries a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison, while rioting carries a penalty of up to 10 years in prison. And over in Bangladesh, the president this week dissolved the country's parliament following an ultimatum issued by the coordinators of student protest that forced the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. The student protest began in July with calls to abolish civil service job quotas, but turned into demands for the 76-year-old Prime Minister to quit after 15 years in power. Hundreds gathered on the grounds of Bangladesh's Parliament House in the capital Dhaka after Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigned and fled the country to a safe house in India on Monday. In defiance of a nationwide curfew, there was jubilation as thousands of people marched in the streets of the capital. The movement that toppled Hasina rose out of demonstrations against public sector job quotas for families of veterans of Bangladesh's 1971 independence war. The move was seen by critics as a means to reserve jobs for allies of the ruling party. In some of the worst violence since the birth of the South Asian nation more than 5 decades ago, more than 400 people are reported to have died in clashes between government forces and protesters, mostly civilians shot by police. On Monday alone, more than 100 people died across the country, making it the single deadliest day in the movement. Hundreds of police stations were also torched. Outside the country, in Whitechapel, a London neighbourhood, home to a large Bangladeshi community, many took to the streets to celebrate Hasina's resignation.
The most important thing is Bangladesh has achieved its second independence now. We achieved our independence first in 1971, but autocrat Sheikh Hasina was ruling the country forcibly. She has snatched away our rights. She has killed thousands of children. Today she has fled away to India and she has resigned. The military has taken over the power, and there will be a neutral administration. There will be free and fair elections in the country, and we will have democratic government. That's why we are victorious today.
My family is back home, and they're suffering. They cannot, they don't get these opportunities like the people who serve the government. They are treated very differently. They don't have any voice. They don't have any right to exercise their voting rights. So it is a relief for us. And I'm happy for my nation, the students, the youngsters. I'm very proud of my nation, and we came as a united front and we are victorious. So I'm very glad. I'm very proud of my country and my people.
We hope that democracy will come back in our country and human rights will prevail again. And lots of students killed within last month, and it's called July massacre or genocide. So we want justice, we want peace in Bangladesh, and we are working on it.
Student protesters in Bangladesh have threatened more demonstrations if parliament was also not dissolved. According to a presidential statement, the decision to dissolve parliament was taken following meetings with the heads of armed forces, leaders of political parties, student leaders, and some civil society representatives. The group also demanded Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus to be the interim government's chief advisor. The 84-year-old is currently on bail, appealing against a 6-month jail term in what he has called a politically motivated case. Foreign countries, including neighboring India, have called for calm and for Bangladesh to uphold democracy.
As honourable members are aware, India-Bangladesh relations have been exceptionally close for many decades over many governments. Concern about recent violence and instability there is shared across the political spectrum. Since the election in January 2024, there has been considerable tension, deep divides, and growing polarization in Bangladesh politics. This underlying foundation aggravated a student agitation that started in June this year. There was growing violence, including attacks on public buildings and infrastructure, as well as traffic and rail obstruction. The violence continued through the month of July. Throughout this period, we repeatedly counseled restraint and urged that the situation be diffused through dialogue.
Turning to Bangladesh, we have seen the announcement that Prime Minister Hasina resigned from her position and departed Bangladesh. We are monitoring the situation carefully. The United States stands with the people of Bangladesh. We urge all parties to refrain from further violence. Too many lives have been lost over the course of the past several weeks, and we urge calm and restraint in the days ahead. We welcome the announcement of an interim government and urge any transition be conducted in accordance with Bangladesh's laws. Finally, we are deeply saddened about the reports of human rights abuses, casualties, and injuries over the weekend and past weeks.
Bangladesh, the fourth largest country in the world by population, has been on edge for weeks amid protests that began over a controversial quota system for government jobs. The system guaranteed a set proportion of roles to the descendants of fighters in Bangladesh's war of independence, seen as a measure to appease Prime Minister Hasina's political base. Thanks for staying with us on the program. As the war in Sudan rages on, more and more people are being pushed into catastrophic levels of hunger. The escalating violence, which has been persisting for over 15 months now, is said to have severely disrupted humanitarian access and pushed parts of North Darfur into famine, notably Zamzam IDP camp, which has an estimated population of at least 500,000. The Zamzam displacement camp in Sudan's North Darfur is struggling with famine. According to a United Nations-backed report, it's plausible that parts of the region, especially the Zamzam camp, are experiencing the worst form of hunger, known as IPC Phase 5.
Our worst fears were confirmed last week. The Famine Review Committee concluded that famine conditions are present in Zamzam camp, close to El Fasher, the capital of North Darfur. This is the same camp that Médecins Sans Frontières warned about 6 months ago, where one child was dying every 2 hours from malnutrition. The Famine Review Committee also found the famine conditions are also likely present in other displacement camps and in and around the city. When famine happens, it means we are too late. It means we did not do enough. It means we, the international community, have failed. This is an entirely man-made crisis and a shameful stain on our collective conscience.
The camp, with a population of 500,000, is located approximately 12 kilometers south of El Fasher town and represents one of the largest IDP camps in Sudan. The RSF has been besieging the area and no aid has reached the sprawling camp for months. More people are on the way as they flee recent conflict between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. The ongoing war and restrictions on aid deliveries are causing the famine, according to Food Monitoring Organization, who say similar conditions may exist in other parts of the conflict region.
Our biggest challenge is the continuation of the conflict, which is hampering our movement as well as our humanitarian supplies. So we call on the parties for an immediate cessation of hostilities that would allow humanitarians to access these communities, some of whom are trapped, and it's very challenging to reach them at this time of the year when the roads are impassable.
Aid agencies say it's critical they scale up their presence now, as the upcoming rainy season will provide a different set of challenges.
We signaled that famine was imminent. We warned then that aid agencies were being blocked from accessing significant parts of the country with food and other essential supplies. But our warnings have not been heard. The Famine Review Committee, FRC, has concluded that there is famine in Zamzam camp near El Fasher in North Darfur. Over 750,000 people are currently classified as being in IPC Phase 5. They are experiencing catastrophic levels of food insecurity. And an estimated 730,000 children are projected to suffer severe acute malnutrition this year, the most life-threatening form of malnutrition. This is the first time that the committee has confirmed a famine for more than 7 years, and the only third time since the global monitoring system was launched 20 years ago.
The deepening hunger crisis in Sudan erupted when the army and RSF triggered a war in April of last year. The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court says there's been mass scale of crimes in the country, including rapes and crimes against children, since the conflict began.
Many credible reports of rapes, crimes against and affecting children, persecution on a mass scale inflicted against the most vulnerable civilians in Sudan and certainly the most vulnerable people in Darfur. Terror has become a common currency, and the terror is not felt by the people with guns and with weapons, but it is felt by people who are running very often with nothing on their feet, people hungry. We have somehow forgotten of the responsibilities under the UN Charter that rest with this Council, by dint of your declaration in 2005 that the situation represents a threat to international peace and security. This feeling that Sudan is a law-free zone in which people can act with abandon based upon the worst proclivities, their worst base instincts, the politics of hate and power, the opportunities to profit, rather than the fundamental imperatives that we owe to each other based on our common humanity.
Approximately 10 million people have been forcibly displaced in Sudan since the war broke out. Some 7.7 million are internally displaced, while more than 2 million have fled to neighboring countries, including Egypt, Chad, the Central African Republic, and Ethiopia. The wars also destroyed critical infrastructure, including food factories, hospitals, banks, and agricultural land. Officials say it will take years for the country to recover. And finally, on the program, on a much lighter note, tagged the largest collection of preserved ancient wooden structures in the world, the Forbidden City has become one of China's biggest tourist centers. Not only does it attract a lot of guests from across the world, but it has also become a place of pilgrimage for the locals who show up in their hundreds daily. Journalists from Channels Television went visiting, telling us all about the history. Take a look.
It's the thick of summer in the People's Republic of China, and it has encouraged a beehive of activities around tourist spots in the country. Here in the capital city, Beijing, the human traffic appears to funnel in one of the directions. The location of the World Heritage Site listed in 1987, the Forbidden City. The stream of people consists mainly of the Chinese, either in small groups or families, and they troop in to see a part of history that has been standing for over 5 centuries. So how did a glaring architectural masterpiece get labeled forbidden?
Why this place is called Forbidden City? Yes, long years ago, this district was an imperial place. Ordinary people were not allowed to go inside, so it's forbidden. Okay, Forbidden City was first built in 1406 by Emperor Zhu, who is the third emperor of Ming Dynasty. Yes, that guy decided to move the capital from southern China to northern China.
Built from 1406 to 1420 by almost 1 million workers, the city reigned as the political and ceremonial seat of power for China. While it served as home for the emperor and his immediate family, it was also the place where he, alongside his cabinet and military hierarchy, hosted important national events. It was a glorious space which became prime target in times of war.
Forbidden City suffered so much in history. Now, first time in 1860, Anglo and French Allied forces invaded China. They launched the Second Opium War. Forbidden City was burned by fire. Okay, almost all the treasures were robbed by them. So if you like to watch Chinese treasures, I recommend you go to British Museum. There are so much.
The architecture remains the same, even though some maintenance work is carried out as required. Today, it is not only a place that is shown off to tourists to take beautiful pictures for social media, it also serves as a big history lesson for the younger Chinese generation.
Okay, we can see some students group over here. Nowadays, we emphasize the Chinese culture now in education. Yes, so now each student need to learn traditional culture. It's very helpful for them.
And they're happy to share this history and heritage with the rest of the world as they remain friendly and warm towards all tourists.
And that's the program today, but remember our top stories are never far away. You can catch them on channelstv.com. Thank you for watching. I'm Teniola Oyetayo. Bye for now.